10 months to live, but I still came across Linnea. I had no idea that she was ALK positive or anything like that. And I remember thinking, if this woman can outlive lung cancer, maybe, just maybe I can too. And so she's just an incredible rock star, and I think she's amazing. So I'm so excited that we can have her on here. Thanks, Linnea.
Okay. I'm going to introduce Linnea. Linnea and I actually, we met each other in 2014 at Santa Monica. And I remember the first time I met her was at a bar, and she was sitting we were sitting next to each other. And I was 5 months into my diagnosis, and here Linnea and I are talking, and she's, telling me about her life and whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. I go on to the next people. At the time, it was like Inspire.com was the big thing. And we all had we didn't have our real names. We had I don't know, whatever, And so I didn't know everybody, and we'd say, well, what's your username? And we'd say, oh yeah, I know you. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. So anyways, the next day, the conference starts, and Linnea's like the rock star in the conference. All the doctors know her. And I was like, I don't realize that, she knows Shaw, Camage, and there was a Jack West, and there was someone else. So in any event, here we are 7 years later, and it's amazing. So I'm going to let Linnea basically introduce herself to everyone and tell her story. So go ahead, Linnea.
All right. Well, I'm honored to be here. I'm sure I know a lot of you who are out there, but I don't know everyone. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. First of all, a disclaimer, I'm on lorlatinib, and I do have a drink beside me, and that makes me speak so much more slowly. So if I'm talking slowly, it's the lorlatinib effect. But I was diagnosed with lung cancer in April of 2005. And I was 45 years old at the time. My youngest child was 7. I had been sick for a couple of years, diagnosed with adult onset asthma. It never occurred to me that I might have lung cancer because I had never smoked. And back in 2005, there really was not much out there about never smokers and lung cancer. So I came down with pneumonia. Couldn't clear it up. Finally got a CAT scan. It showed a mass in my lungs. And 4 days later, I heard those words, "You have lung cancer." And in the days prior to my diagnosis, I had been quickly Googling and learning about it. And really all I knew is that the statistics were terrible. Back in 2005, overall stats were 14%. And if you were stage 4, they were 1%. So fortunately, I had a tumor confined to my left lower lobe. Surgery was a possibility. I had my left lower lobe removed the old-fashioned way, lobectomy. And that was followed by 4 rounds of adjuvant chemo. And the goal was to try to cure me. So I went into that first scan post-chemo, expecting to hear the news that I was cancer-free. And instead, there was already something in my left lung again. So now we began this period of watch and wait, where I'd have scans every 3 months, and each scan, there would be more of what my then oncologist characterized as schmutz in my lungs. About 2 years into this process, I said, so approximately how much schmutz is there in there? And he said 33, which I thought was pretty specific for approximate. And I understood implicitly that if this schmutz was indeed cancer, then I was, if you will excuse my language, fucked. So that spring, I began to be very symptomatic again. We biopsied me. I was restaged to 4. And at that visit, I said to my oncologist, is it time to get my affairs in order? And he said, yes. And I said, how much time do I have? And he said 3 to 5 months. So my youngest started counseling. I started counseling. I went back to Colorado to say goodbye to family. I essentially accepted the fact that I was going to die, because this was 2008 and there truly was nothing else left to do. So as sort of a last ditch effort, I had gone on Tarceva, which is an EGFR inhibitor, had all the side effects, no response, of course. They know now that it can actually exacerbate ALK lung cancer. So I went into my scan review 2 months later. Of course, it was worse, but the doctor said, I have news. And that is that we submitted your biopsy for further genetic testing, and you are positive for a newly identified driver in lung cancer, ALK. And then he said to me, the way I see it, you have 4 options. You can stay on Tarceva, you can return to traditional chemotherapy, you can do nothing, or you can enroll in this phase 1 clinical trial that has just opened at the hospital that targets ALK. And the only thing he could tell me as far as other participants is that there'd been one at the hospital. They had been someone who was very sick. They seemed to be responding, and then they died. And they died in part because of side effects of the experimental therapeutic, crizotinib. But I was obviously between a rock and a hard place. I knew that if I chose any of the other 3 options, it meant certain death. And my hope was that if I were to enroll in this trial, that my life might be extended by even a few months, that I would have a little bit more time with my children and my husband. So I said yes. And on October 1st of 2008, I became the 4th person in the world with non-small cell lung cancer to take crizotinib. And I had an amazing response. I started to feel better within days. I emailed my oncologist. He cautioned me to stay calm, wait until I saw my scans. And then at my scan review 7 weeks later, as I walked in the door, he was just smiling ear to ear. He said, "This is flipping amazing. It's the best news I've given anybody in months." And the before and after scans side by side, I mean, it was amazing. I burst into tears. I mean, I had been preparing myself for my death, and now I was going to live. Of course, my oncologist cautioned me that this did not represent a cure, and this being 2008, there were no other ALK inhibitors. So essentially the goal was to eke out as much time as I could. And I ended up with progression after a year, but I got 2 more years out of crizotinib before ceritinib came to trial. And at this point, I'll just kind of cut to the chase. Obviously, I'm still here, and currently, I'm enrolled in my 6th phase 1 clinical trial. In April, it'll be 16 years since I was diagnosed. When diagnosed, I was a young woman, 45. Now I'm 61, and I think I can say I'm old. So
you're looking good. And I like the blue glasses and the blue fur.
Thank you, thank you. I dressed up for y'all tonight.
All right. So what we typically do.
At least on the upper half.
So I'm going to go ahead and introduce a couple polls, and the first poll I'm going to launch is what type of treatment are you taking? So please enter the correct response. So Linnea and I can, and the rest of us can know who's our audience. Some surprises. All right.
Hey, Mark, there are some people who are texting me saying they're having a hard time getting in. Is there any way you can, I don't think I'm a co-host, so I can't help them.
Okay, hold on.
Just one of those things that helped me. I turned my video off when I went to enter. It was just a little thing and it seemed to help. I don't know if that was one of the
Thanks,
things.
Stephanie.
I don't show anyone in our waiting room.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to send him a personal invite to it.
And I will make you a co-host, which I thought I already did.
Thanks, sorry.
Okay, you're officially a co-host. So going back to the type of treatment, you guys can, I'm going to share the results with you right now. So that's who we have in the audience. So wow. I have to announce this because that doesn't get recorded. So alectinib is 61%, lorlatinib is 21%, and I guess coming up in the rear there would be brigatinib, which at 10%, and chemotherapy it's only 3%. So that's interesting. And then I'm going to go ahead and relaunch another poll here. Okay, the next question is going to be the length of diagnosis. You guys see that? And actually, I should have had another column there after 5 years, like 7 years, and then after 7. Linnea, you could have been in 16 or older. Okay, I'm going to end the polling on that one, show the results. So basically, we have a lot of newcomers here. So Linnea, you're going to be an inspiration to these. So we have 40% is 1 to 3 years. Then we have 5 years plus is 21, which is great. Then 3 and 5 and 1 and older are about the same at 19. So, and the next one, you can do multiple choices here. And this is how many numbers of TKIs have you taken? And if you've also had chemotherapy or immunotherapy, you can also hit that also. Okay, I'm gonna end the polling on this. So a lot of people still have only taken 1 TKI, and traditional chemotherapy is also at 31%. 1 TKI is at 60%, and 2 TKIs are at 26%. So it kind of gives us an idea, Linnea, you know, where we're at with the people in the audience. So my question to you is, and I can't see you, but my question to you would be is, here you are diagnosed and you have a young child who's 7 years old, and you have 3 children. I believe 1 is in their 20s, correct? The oldest?
19 at that time.
19.
Yep.
So, you know, we have a lot of mothers out there that are diagnosed early on because of our cancer and the ages and the demographics it touches. How would you deal with it, and what was available to you for services?
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't deal with it very well initially. I was so sad. I was so afraid. I was also angry. I just couldn't believe that this had happened. I even Googled what the odds were of someone my age who had never smoked getting lung cancer. And it was sort of like being hit by lightning. And I had some anger toward my general practitioner who had misdiagnosed me with asthma. I had some anger that no one had ever said this could be lung cancer. And so I just kind of shut down at first. And for me, in the long run, I think this was a good thing because I have a short attention span and I got sick of myself really fast. And it was like I got this out of my system. And after a while, instead of thinking about why had this happened, I just thought about, okay, what can I do now? But the first couple of weeks were grim. My youngest, when he came to the hospital, it would have been 2 weeks after my diagnosis that I was post-surgery. And he just crawled in my bed and made these little animal sounds. And any of you who are parents understand this can still get me what that's like. And it broke my heart, but it also made me so determined to stay alive. And I can honestly say that in the almost 16 years hence, that at those points where I get low, and there have been points where I have felt really low because it is like a roller coaster. It's my kids who keep me going. And even now that they're grown-ups, I know how much they need me and want me to stay. So it's my motivation.
So inspirational wise, you knew that you have these children and you, this is in 2005, you know, this is pre-crizotinib. So you almost have like a 3-year period before you're even taking a TKI drug. So, and you go directly onto chemotherapy, correct? So you go from, you know, having surgery for your lung, how's it pronounced?
Lobectomy.
Lobectomy on your,
yep.
on your lung, and then is it in both lungs or is it just in one lung?
It was just in my left lung at that point in time, but it was large. It was a 5-centimeter tumor. And so I was diagnosed as a 1, but a 1B, which I would learn later, there was a pretty significant difference between that and 1A.
Right. So so jump forward and here you are, now your son is 10 and you're given a chance for a TKI and you have no idea because as of in 2013, when I was diagnosed, when you went on and Googled it, I mean, there was very little information on it. And you know, I guess we kind of got the golden ticket because we're ALK positive versus lung cancer. So here you are in 2005 with a diagnosis that's still a brutal diagnosis. And then they find this gene and you're kind of given more hope. So you're constantly grabbing onto the next baton along the way. So I guess my next question to you would be, and I know I'm jumping around here, but my question would be, you know, the roller coaster effect, you know, the falling off the cliff, you know, without, you know, you've been there, you know, you've been in, how many trials did you mention? 6 trials?
I'm in my 6th now. Yeah.
Right. And so you've been the 4th and the 3rd and the 5th person in the world to be in these trials. So, I mean, the gut wrenching that you've taken, I mean, how do you advise other people on this Zoom call, you know, how to deal with that?
Well, when I was first diagnosed, I remember saying to myself, this is going to be hard, but I can do this. And the reason I felt I could do this is I believed I had the skill set for kind of the long run. And the interesting thing is, up until this point in my life when I was diagnosed, I wouldn't say I felt I had a lot of self-esteem or that I had been much of a success at, frankly, anything. I was trying my darndest to be a good parent, but I knew that I could sit comfortably with uncertainty. I knew that I was not risk averse. In fact, that was a quality that probably got me in trouble in my youth, but I realize now that I could use this to my advantage. I did well with being uncomfortable. I did well with things being boring. I mean, none of these are heroic qualities, but kind of all put together, it put me in sort of the ideal position to do something that was just going to take a lot of persistence and stamina.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in here with your persistence, because this person that we're speaking to, when I read her blog from 2009 up into I think last month, I think you had a posting, but these are the things that you've been involved in, and I'm sure I missed some of them, but you were on ABC News 3 times, Boston Globe, New York Times, Dr. Oz Show. You were on NBC. You were in the Wall Street Journal, did a thing on you. Cure Magazine, you write for them. Cure Talk interviews, New York Times, American Cancer Society. You have did a longevity interview in 2015. You blog for Everyday Health. You were part of the V Foundation video, Pfizer videos for Lorlatinib, longevity keynote speaker for the Scientific and Clinical Research Roundtable, Longevity Survivor Face of Hope Award in 2016, O Magazine. You've written for the Harvard Magazine. You were voted one of the best blogs in WebMD. And then the groups that you've been affiliated with are Lung Cancer Alliance, National Lung Cancer Partnership, Lung Cancer Research Program, sponsored by the Department of Defense, CDMRP. There's a lot of acronyms here, but I'll continue. Lung Force with American Lung Association, AACR Survival Scientist Program, National Cancer Moonshot Initiative with our, I guess, our new president, AACR Scientist Survivor Program, DP, DFARM Distributive Initiatives US, COE, Patients and Partners US 2019 Conference, CTTI, Clinical Trials Trends. It goes on and on. 2 more, people.com, and recently the Israel Cancer Research Fund. Okay, so of all of those accomplishments, is the biggest accomplishment surviving for 16 years?
Sometimes I think so. And I'm going to let you write my resume.
Your book?
Because I need one.
Oh, you are in the middle of writing a book, aren't you?
I am. But
I don't know.
No,
I forgot about the TED Talk from Amanda Newstead.
I shared with my oldest son that I felt that getting cancer and being good at dealing with it was the thing that had finally boosted my self-esteem, as well as the way that my friends and my family looked at me. And he just said, "That's so sad, Mom." And I said, "No, I don't think it is sad. You know, it's just, these are the cards I was dealt. And I figured out a way to make it into something as powerful and as positive as possible." So that's not sad.
So basically you found life's purpose, like the Viktor Frankl, finding life's meaning through lung cancer, your advocacy. And you now you don't even call it advocacy. You have another word for it. Activism.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what? The best part, I was just explaining this to someone today, that prior to my diagnosis, I would have described myself as someone who was afraid of so many things, including cancer. And I often said, oh, I can't, meaning I just believed I was not capable. And now I am so comfortable with uncertainty, which is a bizarre thing, but boy, is it a gift. It makes life so much easier. I'm not afraid of anything, and I believe I could do anything. So, I mean, it's
well, I'm gonna interrupt you here for 1 second. I have some quotes here from your own blog, so I'm gonna use your own blogging to get some answers from you. This is October 17th, 2009. So where are you in your drugs at that point? Do you remember? Crizotinib or seratinib?
No, I would have been on crizotinib, and I would have just started my blog at that point too.
Okay, well, this is the beginning. Time is no longer something I can take for granted. Now that I'm past my expiration date, I can help, but we are aware of the tendencies of my existence. When our lives are in balance, we don't have to focus too much on one thing. It is difficult to maintain balance when you have a terminal illness. You still have a terminal illness. You still have an expiration date stamped on your forehead. And you know what? In 2009, this is a problem with our disease. In 2009, you were planning your death. Yeah. So you've been planning your death for how many years?
A long time. But again, the way I put it is death is my familiar. And because death is my familiar, the way I describe it is it's not like I would invite death to sit at the table and sup with me, but death has been there a good deal of the time. So it simply cannot startle me, shake me up, intimidate me the way it once did. So in a way, I live my life as if I'm never going to die, even though I always know that I could die.
But we all die. We know that, correct?
We do. But I don't have to think about it now.
The funny thing is I deleted this, but you gave me a great quote from Gilda Radner at the very beginning of your blog, who basically, I'm paraphrasing Gilda. I'm sure these young folks don't know who Gilda Radner is, but she was one of the original cast of Saturday Night Live. And she basically said, everyone should get a cancer diagnosis because it awakes you to life and the mundane and the crap that we deal with. And that what makes life very important. So, basically the bottom line is we're all awakened. Unfortunately, it took this illness to awake us. But I don't know. I mean, that's easy for us to say because we're playing with house money, you and I. We were not supposed to be here, right? We were given very short times of windows of living. So now with the third generation TKIs, with lorlatinib being really going to be a first line drug, you write in your blog, later in your blog, that's your worry also, is then the clinical dollars might not be going into these trials if lorlatinib is going to be such a sustainable drug for people on the first line. So I know I'm bouncing around again, but what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's true. There is not such great financial incentive to come up with a fourth generation ALK inhibitor. And it's because we represented a small piece of the pie to start with. And by the time you get to a fourth gen, that piece of pie is smaller and smaller. So because of that, I think we have to keep presenting our stories, keep highlighting the human side of things. And just not let anybody off the hook on this, because our lives are important. And it just so happens that people with mutations like ALK tend to be younger. So a lot of us have young families, and we owe it to our kids to do everything we can to stay alive. So we have to keep on people. We have to keep on researchers. We have to keep on pharma. We have to remind them that we're here and we matter, and we're expecting that 4th gen ALK inhibitor.
Somewhere in your blog, you say how you stormed the Capitol. This is way before it was cool, just recently, but you stormed the Capitol, right? Because you wanted to have more funding for lung cancer, and I forgot what year that was, but I remember reading it. And then you've kind of had a battle recently with pharma over the last, I believe, since 2018.
Oh, I have an ongoing battle. It's love-hate.
So let's talk about the love-hate relationship. So talk to us about the love-hate relationship and what your thoughts are.
Well, I need them, but they need people like me too. And, my battle with them has been over all sorts of issues, starting with the fact that people with cancer are generally not compensated for participation in trials. That's starting to change, but in my 6 clinical trials, I've never been compensated for anything. I've never had parking paid for, nothing. And this infuriates me, because obviously nobody else in this whole ecosystem works for no incentives, and joining a clinical trial is not community service. It's kind of a big fucking deal. It's expensive, and it really grinds me to go across the street to the Starbucks across from MGH and see ads on the bulletin board. And of course, I haven't been to Starbucks for a long time now, but they would always have these ads for clinical trials at MGH for things like eczema, where people were being compensated. It's like, how can this be? So that's one thing. The other thing has been the excessive number of scans I've undergone. And anybody who wants to know more about that can check it out in my blog, because I've written a lot about it. I've had a tremendous number.
Let's outlivingcancer.com is the blog you can find. And what's amazing to me about the blog is this. On the right-hand side is all the topics that you have. So you compile all of your topics. It's linked from whatever you're writing. You must tag it and put it onto the right-hand side of the columns. But what's amazing to me, since I just read it, like from top to bottom, is this, that it doesn't matter where you are, it's timeless, because wherever you are in the cancer treatment and your emotions, you can find what Linnea is, and you can tell by her passion and the way she speaks. She doesn't hold anything back, which a lot of these forums that we have with these Zooms is very censored and very unemotional, I guess I can say the word, because we're talking to doctors, right? And these doctors are great human beings, and they're the top leaders in the field of ALK, but it's very hard to get emotions out there in these Zooms. But go to the blog, and it's all there. It might take you a while to filter in the information, but you and I have a lot in common. The difference between the two of us probably, and this is, I think, another question I want to present to you is, our cancers are different, even though you and I have the same gene mutation. We have a totally different, you've had no CNS involvement, thank God. And you've been very fortunate in that way. So mine has been more involved with the CNS, with the brain, and with brain surgeries and stuff like that. So, we have a little different loss, I guess you can say. you know, but we still have the same fight in the battle, and that is to try to research, raise money, and try to find a cure for this, because obviously that's the game, is to get research dollars, because I think both of us agree that from our last subject, what we talked about. But I think what the best thing for me right now and for us to do right now is I'm going to grab Gina and have her start asking some questions, because I see that we have like 43 comments in the chat. You and I can probably chat for about 4 or 5 hours. So I don't know if you know what your sleeping schedule is, but I'm going to open up for Q&A, and I'm going to mute myself and let Gina go at it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of great questions. So some of them we can summarize up, but I think we'll start with, tell us about clinical trials and how you actually become a participant in one. Like, is your doctor involved in it or what?
Well, I've been very fortunate that way too, where I have not had to go looking for them. I get my care at MGH, Massachusetts General Hospital, and it's a research and teaching hospital. And I've also been very lucky with my oncologists. I had Tom Lynch initially, then Alice Shaw, now Jessica Lynn. So they tend to bring it to me. What I do though is always stay abreast of what is happening, so I can ask them questions, and I like to know what's going to happen next, you know, what's coming down the pike, what my options are. So I kind of have the best of all worlds that way. And one of the things I work for as an advocate activist is to try to address disparity, because it's unfair that any of us get cancer, but it's also unfair that we don't all have the same options. So
absolutely, that's one of the things you see in this group, and I'm sure through the years, I know that you were probably on Inspire too before, you know, all some of the other methods, but gosh, if anybody in here needs a second opinion, we do have the second opinion program. If you're a member of ALK Positive, where you can get a free second opinion, you just have to apply. Go to under announcements and you can find it. So we're so lucky we have a donor that will, you know, allow people to be able to see an ALK specialist. But you're 100% right. So many people don't get access even to clinical trials. Through the years, Linnea, you have had so many scans with being a part of a clinical trial and being a patient. Can you tell us about just like your scanning routine? Like, have you, through the years, have you decreased the number of scans that you've gotten and stuff like that?
I have, but you know, this is a contentious story, but at a certain point in time, I sat down and I counted the number of scans I'd had. And the reason I did this is Stanford put out an article talking about how every time you got a scan, there was some sort of genetic damage. And I thought, you know, if I only had a few, this would not be a big deal. But when I sat down and counted, I had 60 abdominal CT scans, 42 brain MRIs, and over 100 spiral CAT scans of my chest. And as Mark alluded to, I only have cancer in my chest. So those abdominal scans and the brain scans, those were not clinically indicated. It was just because of protocol. So the way I approach this is to ask the sponsor if they could change the scanning schedule, not just for me, but for everyone who'd been in the trial for more than a year, because we weren't getting scans, even standard of care scheduling. It was every 6 weeks. So they ignored me. And so my response was to become non-compliant. And that was a big risk, but it ended up paying off in the long run because they didn't kick me out of the trial. My oncologist supported me. And a year later, they did change the scanning schedule for all participants.
Go you.
Yeah.
Because that can be a serious complication, all the radiation and gadolinium in your brain and all.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention that. I mean, that I had refused to get any more of the injected contrast in my brain because I was concerned about gadolinium. And sure enough, a few years ago, I became Dr. Shaw's first patient to have gadolinium in their cerebellum. So.
Oh, goodness. So we all know that you're on a new clinical trial. First question is, were you ever on lorlatinib alone?
Yes. Yeah, I was in the phase 1 trial for lorlatinib. In fact, I can tell you, I was telling someone the other day that I should get an author credit for the label because I was the first person to report side effects. So, and that just has to do with how early I was in the trial. But I think on lorlatinib, I would have been like 7th in the world. So.
Wow. And you even know the guy who created it. He's a big fan of yours. I've heard Ted Johnson spoke at our ALK Summit. Yeah. He's a super big fan of yours. Can you tell us about the clinical trial that you're on right now? Kind of tell us about what it entails and what it's like and what it feels like.
Yep. So right now I'm on a trial that combines lorlatinib with a MEK inhibitor, binimetinib. And it's not easy. I mean, it has all the attendant side effects of lorlatinib, and then binimetinib has its own unpleasant side effects, including pustular acne and fingers that just split open. So we're figuring out ways to deal with all of that. I've been referred to a dermatologist tomorrow, but right now it's pretty much under control with an antibiotic. But the good news is I've had a positive response. I had my first scan a few weeks ago, and I've had a 57% resolution of my cancer, which, if you think about it, as far out as I am on the limb, and I, of course, have quite a few resistance mutations now, this is huge.
This is huge and gives me so much hope. I am 5 years in and progressing a little on lorlatinib, and so that gives me so much hope. So
and it should. It should.
Oh, how do you feel about the quick approval of the COVID vaccine or creation and approval of the COVID vaccine?
Well, I mean, we all want it, but I think it's also been kind of instructional as to how quickly things can happen when there's a will and there's focus and there's funding. It's personally been frustrating for me that lung cancer patients aren't prioritized as people to receive the vaccine. And I've been very busy on Twitter trying to get people's attention. And MARC had asked about my relationship with pharma. Well, I contacted one of the sponsors of my current trial on Friday because they happen to be one of the makers of a vaccine. And I said, wouldn't it be great if you just gave this vaccine to your clinical trial participants? So the person I spoke to was good enough to get back to me, and they said they're not sure that FDA will allow it, but they're going to inquire. And I said, I think it would be a great idea. So
great start. Thank you so much for doing that for the rest of us, because that is a big concern for so many of us. And so many of us are down on the bottom of the list when it comes to getting the vaccine, which is
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions that comes across the group, like our ALK Positive support group all the time, is diet. Did you ever do anything different with your diet, and did it work?
I did. I thought before I was diagnosed that I had a pretty healthy diet, but I would do things like have a Coke at lunch on a pretty regular basis. And at a certain point in time, I really switched up the way that I eat so that it's a lot more plant-based. I do my best to get organic. Sometimes there are limits as far as price and other constraints. One thing I have not done is give up alcohol, but I have to be very careful with it because I've had situations where my liver enzymes have risen, and the drug I'm on now, binimetinib, everybody in this trial is having trouble with their, and Gina, you can help me say this, creatinine? How do you say that word?
Creatinine.
Okay.
That's the Southern nurse in me anyway. The Southern nurse in me says creatinine.
All right. So, I pay attention to that. But I also think you just have to have a balance between kind of privation and pleasure. I mean, we all want to enjoy the time we have here too.
We have to truly live, right?
Yeah.
A little bit too. I was just thinking, you hit on a couple points that I think that is really important for us as a group, just to kind of consider. But one of those was that, we're such a small population, and coming up with the next drugs for the people who progressed off of lorlatinib, the third line inhibitors. Since we're such a small population, the FDA was talking to us a little bit and just wondering if we were scared about, the next things, if there would be anything. And my answer was 100% yes. That's why we fundraised for research, and we, try to at least find something. Is there anything that you see coming down the line, or anything that you're, do you think the thing is the SHP2 inhibitor, or do you think it's something else?
I thought for a while that there would not be a 4th gen ALK inhibitor, just because of how long it had been since lorlatinib. But I kind of think now there might be. And I'm hoping that things like Alice Shaw being in pharma will help us, because she certainly understands the urgency and always has her patients in mind. I am also highly encouraged by the fact that a year ago, I figured I was out of options, and now here I am in my 3rd clinical trial in 1 year. That's highly encouraging. So I think I'm scared too, for sure, but even though I said I'm never afraid of anything, but I think there are so many reasons to stay hopeful. And as you all know, each one of these therapies is just kind of a stepping stone, where we're just buying time till the next thing, And that's the tricky part, getting from stone to stone.
Absolutely. I think you might have been the first one in our group to dub Alice Shaw as the queen of ALK, perhaps. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this like woman knows her stuff. And I went to go see her, and of course loved her, because everybody loves her when they meet her. She's incredibly intelligent and knows so much about this disease. But it was a total gut punch when she went to Novartis for me. I thought, oh no, it's going to happen. But I think what you said just then is perfectly on spot, is that we're actually really lucky that she's there.
It was hard for me too, Gina, and I congratulated her, but then I said, I hope you know that this is harder on me than anyone. Of course, I was just being selfish, but I can tell you that Jessica Lynn is fabulous too. So we are very lucky that we have some formidable oncologists.
And one of the silver linings of COVID is now Mass Gen also accepts patients remotely. So Jessica Lynn can see you remotely. You don't actually have to travel to Massachusetts, even though Boston is fabulous. I love Boston. It's one of my favorite cities. But now you don't have to travel. You can just see her online. So that's one of the silver linings anyway.
Yeah.
Linnea, how are you doing with COVID and the isolation? Has it been difficult for you?
Yeah.
Because you're such a hugger?
Yeah, that's part of it. I'm such an extrovert, and it's really cut into my dating. It's just, I know. It's been hard. And the last drug that I was on, which was a TROP2 inhibitor, I got super, super depressed on that.
Can you explain to people what that is, actually?
I went, yeah, it was DS1062A, and depression.
It's like a stopgap, right?
Yeah, depression is not listed as the side effect, but I know myself well enough to know that it really impacted me that way. So I was starting on that just as the pandemic was starting. And of course, I did not have a positive response on it either. So I had a tough year.
According to your blog, you did get some mileage out of it to get you to the next drug.
Well, I got a year.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what the game is, isn't it? I mean, the advice to us is stay in the game, because you never know what's coming down the pipe. Right?
Yeah, and there are times where it's hard to tough it out, but you do have to keep looking at that horizon.
And that's the beauty of your blog, because if you go into your blog, and you had some tough years there that I don't know, it was 2018 or something. I should write your book, I'm telling you. But there's some tough moments in every one of us that we have to deal with, because we hit these peaks and valleys. If you go for 3 or 4, like I'm on 4 years of lorlatinib, besides reducing down to 75 and having those side effects at 100, my life's been great, but that I'm going to end up hitting something, down the road, right? And you don't know when that time's going to be. So it's like you're trying to sip every drop of life out, and trying to, I cannot believe how much travel you've done, during your blog. I mean, amazing. You had chemotherapy, and then the next day you were jumping on an airplane. It's like, I mean.
Well, I am crazy.
Okay, well, especially on lorlatinib, then we'll give you a pass on that one. But I mean, that's the beauty of who you are as a human being, is that, and that's really, I read it and I'm like celebrating your life, because you've outreach to so many lung cancer patients, and you've seen so much loss, and you've come close to these people, and you share it in your blog, and in November, especially during Lung Cancer Awareness Month. It's, when you read it, you feel horrible and devastated, but you're celebrating their life by, what I'm saying? So can you expand on that a little for us?
Yeah, well, I I think the important thing to remember here, Mark, is I remember being very afraid of getting close to people because, you know, you do the math and you know that if you become close to someone, there is a chance that you're going to lose them. But what I have come to learn, and this is something I was explaining to somebody who's not in our community today too, I have probably cared deeply for 200 people who have died. I mean, it's just the way it is. But it has been such a privilege to get to know each of these individuals and to care about them and to also learn that my heart, I'm going to start crying again, sorry, but my heart can expand far beyond what I ever thought possible, you know? And that too, and I swore in the beginning when I was first diagnosed, I said, I will never say there's anything good about this disease, but I do use the word gift sometimes. And knowing all of you has been such an extraordinary gift.
What's the mantra of the first thing you do in the morning? What are the?
I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive.
Which is a great mantra, because when I wake up, that's the first thing I do. When my eyes open up, so let's go to something that it's your faith. You know, you say during the blog that you're an atheist, which I understand, but like, what is the faith? I mean, you're very spiritual, right? I mean, you have some. I mean, there's things in your blog that you reveal that, to me, that gets you through. You know, explain to us, like, what is your spiritual beliefs?
Well, first of all,
I'm not talking organized religion. I'm talking spiritual.
Being an atheist doesn't mean you don't believe in anything. It just means you don't believe in a deity. Mm-hmm. And I do believe in love. And I feel like love is kind of the secret sauce in the world, because the more you give, the more you get, you know, and how fantastic is that? And I also just get such pleasure out of simple things. So I am one of those people that even if the world just kind of truly did go to hell, I'd still want to be here. You know, I want to experience it. I want to experience all of it.
Okay, I set you up for a post here. March 15th, 2017. So I'm about to tell you something that is either going to make you laugh or cry or not. Maybe you'll just want to punch me in the face.
I write that?
Yeah, you did. maybe you were drinking at the time you wrote it. I don't know. Sometimes I get really, really tired of being grateful, and then I'll continue with it. But I think you know the rest of it, and that is, here you are. You're grateful every day you wake up. You're in 6 clinical trials. You're helping thousands of people down the line, right? And you're being grateful, and you've lived for our disease, you're probably the oldest existing ALK patient, correct? Most likely.
Of ALK, yeah.
So tell us about, like, you just said something like a couple minutes ago about what this disease has given you. A silver lining, I guess, I hate to say it, but.
Yeah. No, I think silver lining is appropriate. The hard part, though, and I'm preaching to the choir, you all know this, is it doesn't get easier, you know? And, you know, even if we didn't have lung cancer, life wouldn't get easier as we got older. But to live chronically with a disease that is usually considered to be terminal, that's hard, you know? And the thing I like to remind healthy people sometimes is that it takes a whole lot of courage to wake up every morning and just face this world with the things we are dealing with, and to do it with a smile on our face, and to be happy for not just ourselves, but everyone else, including the people who haven't had some of the same misfortune, you know? But I suppose that part of what helps me keep perspective is, even when I think that my own situation is the shits, I can always look around and see someone where it's like, no, that's harder for them.
How would you say prospectively for your caregivers and your loved ones, your family, your friends? You have a huge circle of friends. I mean, you've gone through some tough times in your own personal life with those relationships, and you and I have something in common. Both of us got divorced. I was married for 26 years and got divorced, and you were married for, I think, what, 25 years or 20 years?
24. Yeah.
24 years. And so, I mean, which is very, you know, this is how I sum it up. I sum it up where, you know, there's things that can, you know, financial, you know, a situation like this, a loss of a child or something dramatic. And, you know, I just sit there and I say, you know, I'm loved. You know, I'm surrounded with people who love me. And the people who are negative forces on you. And I really outlived my marriage. I was supposed to really pass away.
I outlived mine too.
Right. And you know what? As soon as COVID, like, you know, you're done with COVID, you'll be dating left and right, like you were. And I was lucky enough, I found someone, which is great. And so I'm engaged.
Congratulations.
So sorry, all the women on this Facebook call, a Zoom call. But anyways, life
all right,
is
Mark,
about...
that's enough. That's enough.
How'd you unmute yourself? But you know what I'm saying? The bottom line is cut out the negative people around your life. You know, you got to surround yourself with people that love you and care for you, that are good human beings. Okay, yep. I'm going to have to turn this over to Q&A to Gina. I'm going to stop with my mushy talk. But...
I don't know. I think I have some questions for you.
Sure.
Uh-oh. Yeah, go ahead, Linnea. Take it away.
Normally I'm the silent person in these calls.
Just very briefly about being engaged.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I was fortunate enough to, I've known this person since middle school. You know? So, and our children have been friends, and they went to school together. The bottom line is, this is interesting that you asked this question, because I asked my psychologist, I asked my social worker and my men's cancer group. I'm like, you know, I was like 6 months into my lorlatinib trial, right? January 2017, I was feeling crappy. I was supposedly going to die, right? And in March, May, I started feeling a lot better. I filed for divorce in April of 2017. And the bottom line is, I went to the courthouse and I got divorced on Thursday. And Saturday, I went up for the first time in 31 years. And so I said to my therapist, to back up, I just said, is it appropriate that I even ask someone out on a date? You know, it's like, this person knows I'm sick, but, you know, is this appropriate? So bottom line is, I'm happy. And it still I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? You're a writer. You know, it's still like something around your neck, you know, it's still a problem, you know, because you're bringing baggage into a relationship. So, and this is baggage. I don't know if the other 83 people really care. They probably have more important questions to ask.
I actually tried on online dating to sort of spin my cancer like it was a good thing.
What I like about it is that you
got harder.
What I like is that you turned around a year ago and you started talking to your cancer. So what do you say to your cancer?
Oh, well, you know, what I'd like to say to my cancer is fuck off. But
why not? Why can't you say fuck off? I mean, you were blogging about it. I mean, what's
right.
Maybe you can give us advice on what to say to our cancer.
No, I mean, I do work a lot with sort of visualization, you know, and I had some sort of illness about 6 weeks ago where I had a high fever, and I just imagined my cancer burning up. And of course, right after that, I got the good scan. So it was like, that's what it was.
You know, MARC does this class that is so great. Just it totally slipped my mind what it's called, MARC, but it's just
guided imagery. Yeah,
guided imagery. Yeah. I love that. Like, let's just keep all of us just picturing that it is gone.
Linnea, you need to show up to one of our groups. We have since I have people on the call, I'm gonna plug them. But every week we have groups that we meet. We have art therapy, we have guided imagery, we have yoga. I don't know if you know Hanka, but Hanka is our yoga teacher, and then we have chair yoga. So
great.
Oh,
you know, we form these small groups of people that have. It's just an incredible experience to Zoom with other ALK patients, or you don't call them patients. What would you call them? That's not even the correct word.
Survivors.
I don't know. You don't like survivors, do you? What's the word that you use?
Don't.
Warriors?
You're living with lung cancer. Somebody who's living with lung cancer.
Yeah.
Or cancer in general. Some people, not everybody's is in their lung. Okay, I want to go back to the relationship thing because we got a great question. Somebody said, did you talk to your spouses, both of you, MARC and Linnea? Did you talk to your spouses about your cancer? And do you think you talked about it like too much and that contributed to the marriage problems? Or do you think you didn't talk about it enough and they didn't really know what was going on with you?
You want to go first? I guess I'll go first. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2012. And unfortunately, my sister-in-law died of ovarian cancer, my ex-sister-in-law, literally 2 weeks before I got Hodgkin's. So my ex-wife was dealing with a loss of her sister. And then I got Hodgkin's literally within her 2-week period. So we dealt with that, but that was the quote unquote good cancer. So when I got lung cancer 7 months later, you know, it was already a problem, but the problem really existed in the marriage a few years before that. So we did go to counseling, and, you know, I just think that, you know, so it was a tough time, but I really thought that why put my kids through a divorce when they were going to bury me in the ground? And I figured I can hold on. And I did, until a point where, you know, the point for me that, I had brain surgery in 2016, and I knew coming out of brain surgery, I was not moving back to my house because I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair. So I ended up moving in with my parents. And that was kind of like a natural break. And at that point in time, you know, 3-4 months later, I got into the trial. And then I ended up divorcing and getting into a relationship. So that was my story.
So I can say in my case that my ex-husband considered our lives too cancer-centric. And I know this because I saw that he had written it down somewhere after I actually left him. But I think, kind of like MARC said, that we had problems before. And when I was first diagnosed, I actually think my cancer made us closer because he was very controlling, and I ended up being incredibly dependent upon him initially. So it was a strength for us. Oddly, where things really started to go south is when I started that clinical trial. What had been a terminal illness suddenly became a chronic illness. And that was an entirely different kettle of fish. And I don't think that being in the position of caretaker was something that he was necessarily cut out for. And there was a lot of pressure on me to do things like get a job. You know, and it was like, sorry, dude, but so it took a lot of courage to leave, but I'm so glad I did. And very much like you said, I say that I outlived my marriage. And when people would say to me, when I would say I was divorced, they'd say, I'm sorry. I'd say, no, it's a good thing. You know, I mean, how optimistic do you have to be to have terminal cancer and get divorced? You know, I mean, obviously, I have some hope for the future.
Oh, that's incredible. Okay, we have some people asking about just your mental state and if you take any drugs and how you just kind of keep your mental state where you're still thriving. And I'm so thankful that Linnea was one of the first people that I went to when I was struggling on 100 milligrams of lorlatinib. And I think she's a great resource to tell us, how do we do this mentally?
Well, up until the time I was diagnosed, I had never had real counseling or taken anything for depression, even though I think I probably had always been at least low level depressed. And then once I got diagnosed, 4 months after my diagnosis, my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he died very quickly. And that's when I bottomed out. So I went on Prozac and it made a huge difference, started seeing a counselor. I took myself off of it after a couple of years because I think I had a bias against being on an antidepressant. But then I found out I was going to die. And, you know, I got depressed again. So I went back on it. And one other time I took myself off of it, and my oncologist was just like, Linnea, please just stay on the Prozac, because it really does help me. And I think that I just had to get to a point where I wasn't afraid of asking for help. And it was Dr. Shaw who actually said to me, it's no different than getting a cast on a broken arm. You know, if you're dealing with depression, take an antidepressant.
Thanks for that. And just for, you know, the validation too, that I think that all of us really have to realize that this is hard.
It's really hard.
It is. And I mean, you're a rock star. You're absolutely amazing. But I think that you would probably say that to anybody, that this isn't something you'd wish on your worst enemy, even though it's been, you said, a gift in some ways too, but this is hard.
Right. But again, I want to circle back to each one of you congratulating yourself in the morning, because it's not easy. And hopefully that's something that as a group we can give each other, is that validation that, yeah, this is tough, but we're doing it.
Becky says you're all amazing. I agree, absolutely, and so is she as well. There's so many incredible people on this call. Linnea, do you is there anything that you want to make sure that we know as a group just about you?
Not about me. Just again, I think if I was going to leave you with something, it's how much strength we get from each other, you know, and even though I'm an extrovert, I'm also kind of a loner. And I tend to be very independent and I can do things myself. But even like writing my blog, although my goal initially was to help other people, I can't tell you how much it has helped me. And I think we all get so much from each other. And the only thing I regret is that we can't do a big giant group hug right now.
I know, is there like a hug reaction?
And one last thing, a plug for ALK Positive. I have known this group since its inception, and it has gone through a lot of changes. It has really become just this phenomenal, phenomenal place. So thank you, Gina. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody who puts so much into it. It's fabulous.
Thank you. You're like an astronaut.
We're all family connected by mutant DNA.
We are all mutants. You know, we need some sort of mutant cheer.
For sure. Linnea, that's your job. You have to come up with the cheer for us.
No, we need a cheerleader. I was never a cheerleader. Who was the cheerleader? Stephanie?
I was a baton twirler, not a cheerleader, but
me too.
Rah, rah, rah.
Gina?
I was a cheerleader. I admit it. Mark, did you have anything you wanted to close with?
No, I just want to say how awesome it is that you're with us and you are sharing your stories, and your blog is amazing, and everyone should check it out, because any step of the way that you're in right now, if you're in a rabbit hole or if you're riding a wave of a good drug, you know, we all are at different places in our journeys, and it really is amazing that Linnea, when we sat next to each other at the bar in 2014, I never thought in 2021 I'd be on a Zoom call with you together. You know, I mean, obviously I was planning my own demise also. And
Right.
That's the toughness with this disease that we have. And we need a cure, and we don't need a fourth TKI, but we're trying to find that cure. And with the research that this group has been doing, it's amazing. So I don't know if we have the ability that we can unmute and people can say hello to you, but
go ahead and unmute yourself. And
just do it one at a time so you guys could say hello to Linnea.
And Mark, I want to add really quickly that if anybody ever wants to talk to me about anything, just reach out. And if I don't answer the first time, reach out twice.
You've been known not to answer your emails, you say in your post.
Linnea, how do you feel about like a blog? I mean, when I was diagnosed in 2016, okay, being that I have little kids and they're a little older now, but I started just a journal and I started writing, and I would write to them thinking that whole negative thoughts thing. So would you recommend me trying to start a blog now and just continue that way, or continue just journaling, whatever makes me comfortable?
Well, and you know what, Stephanie, because I have memory issues now, I can go back to my blog to check things. So, and I have discovered that at least my youngest child reads it now, which is pretty special to me.
By the way, he did go to MIT. Did you graduate?
Not yet. Almost.
All right.
Wow. You have to be proud.
Well, thank you. I gotta teach in the morning, so I appreciate seeing you and hearing you. It's just been really awesome. So.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love you, Linnea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.